show that Jacinda Ardern has a clear lead over Bill English as preferred Prime Minister.
It's May here, and that preferred Prime Minister and the actual Prime Minister is with us in the Auckland studio. Good morning to you, Prime Minister.
Morena.
The poll, would you have been hoping for a bit more of a bounce?
Oh, to be honest, Guy, I hadn't put a lot of thought into it. Of course, you obsess over these things studiously during an election. But post-election, you track to see how you're trending, and we've seen as a party, a little bit of a lift. There's still that confidence across the block of parties that have formed government. The right track, wrong track is a number I'm really interested in, and on that we're faring well. But I think what you'll see, and I'm picking up this sentiment generally, yes, there's a lot of optimism about the new government, but they also want us to demonstrate that we've earned their confidence, earned their support, and of course that'll take a bit of time. So I'm not surprised by the poll at all.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because it is unusual to see an opposition party rise. I don't know, you rose a little bit too, and you're well ahead of Bill English on the preferred PM. But it's interesting the way you're characterising. You think that perhaps you, just by being dint of government, that doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to be falling all over you in the popularity stakes. You're saying you've got to earn it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't necessarily expect people to change their view on support 7 weeks in simply because you've arrived. I think things do take a little bit of time. I think what we've seen relative to that last poll is the opposition, I think from memory, saying a bit static based on where they were in that last one. We've got a little bit of a lift. But yeah, I think we'll be looking for that pattern over time. And that will tell me then that it's probably a little more. There's a little more surety around it if it is something that we build on.
You heard. I don't expect you to have the details on this because it's an internal matter for the Greens. But you heard some of May Heron's report there. Are you concerned at all that these kind of issues could be an issue for you when if there's trouble in a support partner? And there's been some divisions and differences between the governing parties over some of the issues like work for the dole and.
No, I think, look, over time, and I think what I heard through that report were internal matters that come with the transition between, one office to another. And there's no doubt that is a difficult period to manage, but that is ultimately for each party to manage. I think over time what we'll see is people will reflect on the government that is made up of 3 separate parties who have built consensus around what they want to achieve as a government, but equally will continue to have areas where they see the world differently. We are distinct parties, but it is building confidence in the fact that we do have consensus and an agenda together, and then people will probably feel a little more surety when they see those parties speaking differently on separate matters. That is MMP. That is the way MMP is meant to work. And over time, I think people will build confidence around that.
And one of the big items on your agenda is announced this week, along with the numbers, the opening of the books, the half-yearly financial update. That's what, Thursday, is it?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, and so you're going to release some work around your families package
That's
and
right.
child poverty measures.
That's right.
What can you tell us at this stage about what you're going to do?
So what we'll be doing this week is the families package is less about the measurement and the targets and all about the work we're actually going to do that will make a difference. We, of course, talked about this as an alternative to the government's proposed tax cut, so that's how we can fund it during the election. But when we release the details of it at the end of this week, we'll also be demonstrating how many children will be lifted out of poverty as a result of that package. The government's tax package originally said 50,000. We're more ambitious than that, and so you'll see those numbers at the end of this week.
Can we see them now?
I certainly can understand the anticipation, but I think I'll wait until we release the whole package in its entirety in a matter of days.
But it's going to be more than 50,000.
Yes, it will.
Yeah. And you're seeking national support for that legislation?
Yeah, well, for the families package...
They're not going to support you on cancelling their tax cuts.
No, then on the families package, I very much... Look, I remain hopeful. I'm an optimist, but I very much doubt they'll likely to support that.
What is it that you're seeking support on?
On the child poverty legislation that we'll be bringing in the new year, before that's introduced, I'll be reaching out.
That's writing the targets into law.
That's right. So you'll remember there's been a lot of back and forth on how we measure poverty in New Zealand. It's not a debate internationally that's here. Most people have agreed internationally how to do it. We want to entrench that into law and require government of any flavour in the future to set targets against them.
And what are those? I mean, it can be a complex area because you've got the deprivation 17
the material deprivation,
index,
the income measures.
50-60% of the median wage. What measures are you going to propose?
So what we're proposing is that actually you have that full range, because that gives you the best snapshot of what's happening to your population. So we'll put all of them the ones that we use most often, and then the government of the day will be required to set 3-year and 10-year targets against them.
And that's what you're hoping to get.
Yes.
Are you writing to Bill English on that?
Yes. And I've even specifically made the decision that the requirement to set the targets is in law. The targets themselves won't be. It's up to the government of today to decide how ambitious they'll be. My hope is that means that there is no reason why any party wouldn't support a piece of legislation like this. And my rationale is that there shouldn't be politics in poverty. We should all set our own goals in this area. It's just the fact that we should all actually have some focus on it.
Okay, just finally, I wanted to talk about a couple of international issues if we've got time. I see that the Iraq government has declared victory over ISIS. Does that mean we're out of there?
Of course, we've had just on 140 personnel in the area who are predominantly working around capacity building for security forces and the federal police. And so that's something that, of course, extends particularly to making sure that there's defence against ISIS. And it's certainly positive to see them losing that stronghold. But that mandate comes up in November next year. I always said that I would review their mandate, and that's what we will do. This, of course, is new information for us to consider alongside that. It takes a while, though, of course, to do that properly. So I'm not planning to change the timelines for that.
And just finally, you met with Bill Shorten. That was over the weekend,
That's
was
right.
it? Yeah. There's a lot of angst in Australia. I don't think that's too strong a word, about China's influence in Australian politics. Their newspapers are full of these headlines at the moment. Has that spilled over here?
Oh, look,
Are you worried about the extent of China's influence? Because there's some academics who think that this is a big issue here.
Look, as the Prime Minister, I have a role on national security issues. I worry about all levels of foreign influence in New Zealand, and I think it's important that we are vigilant, that we're never complacent. I've certainly looked at what's happening in Australia. I do think our, for instance, electoral laws set a pretty high test. We make sure that any donations over $1,500 are disclosed. We do have a different regime. Even the amount that you're able to spend in a campaign is set at a much lower bar than in Australia. So we are different case in that space. But yes, we need to be vigilant for any form of foreign influence.
Thanks very much for your time this morning. Do appreciate it. That's the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, in the Auckland studio. It's 24 minutes to 8.
Coming up before 8 on Morning Report, prominent New Zealand scientists warn a government research funding agency is not working. More than 100 people gathered in Christchurch to protest the police decision not to prosecute the designers of the CTV building. And 110 km/h speed limits start on 2 roads today. We'll cross to our reporter who's driving one of them. And now